Okay, we're a couple minutes past the hour here, so I'm going to go ahead and get started as people continue to join us. That's wonderful as you're walking in. Let us know you're here and where you're watching from. For those of you who haven't joined us before, just a little bit of housekeeping for you. At the bottom of your screen, if you're on a desktop, you'll see an option to chat. So you can go ahead and open that screen. It'll appear on your right side, and you can keep the chat alive through our entire hour together. Beautiful music in the background. Learn more about this. Also, there's a Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. So if you have any specific questions, if you put them in that box, that'll be a window that'll open. If you click on it, put them there. It helps us keep track of them, and we try to answer as many questions as we can in real time here while we're gathered for the hour. So, welcome. Bienvenidos a todos. I'm happy to be here. I'm Kate Williams, the Senior Managing Editor at GIA. Happy to be here with my colleagues today. First, we have Peter Kolar, my partner in crime, my first hire at GIA. Thanks for being here again, Peter. He's been on several of the summer sessions in these last few weeks, so make sure you go back and check those out on our Facebook page and on our YouTube page. And one of my best friends in the whole world, Tony Alonso, Dr. Tony Alonso. I told him I would call him Doctor. Welcome. I'm going to tell us all about the latest project, Caminemos con Jesús, which we just had an absolutely phenomenal time putting together and learning all about Cuban music styles and how they work so perfectly with the liturgy. So I'm excited to hear more from Tony about that. And we have from Miami, Juan Delgado here. He's been in the music recording industry for the better part of the last 20 years. He is a Grammy-winning artist of his own work, and he has done sound recording and engineering on so many more projects that have really received international acclaim. We are so blessed that he is here with us and that he did such a phenomenal job on Caminemos con Jesús. Thank you, Juan, for that. He's also, he'll never tell you this, but he is an incredible human being who is also a church musician himself. Just so humble and full of life, and this team right here has made for a really life-giving last year together. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
With us all. Yeah. So Tony, I'm going to start with you, put you on the spot, and ask you to tell us a little bit more about the genesis of this project. Why did you do this?
Yeah. First of all, thank you all. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Juan. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Kate. Thanks for everybody for joining us. Gosh, the deepest roots of this project feel like they're planted in my childhood visiting Miami for every Christmas and maybe one other time during the year when my grandfather would take me to this record store on 8th Street called Casino Records. And he would like take CDs or tapes at the time off the shelf and just hand them to me and say, you need to listen to this, you need to listen to this. And it was like he was assigning me homework that I had to go do and then report back and tell him what I thought of it. And I loved the music. And in many ways, even though I grew up in Minnesota, it was the music and the food. Those were the two things that really rooted me in my Cuban heritage when I was far from it in many ways. And so for the longest time, I had been trying to figure out how to merge my vocation as a liturgical composer with my Cuban heritage. And quite honestly, seeing the witness and the talent of so many of my Mexican-American colleagues is what inspired me to think about my own Cuban roots, because we have lots of incredible enculturated Mexican music in the US that we sing. Mariachi styles and other styles. Also a lot of music from Spain that's fantastic, that's widely sung. But I think for a complex set of historical reasons, we don't have a lot of Cuban liturgical music. And I thought, gosh, I would love to bring these things together, not only because it's a part of who I am, but I think Cuban music is so particularly suitable for the liturgy because it has those repeated phrases. You know, if you hear like the soloist, like I don't know if you heard when you were gathering, like, que alegría cuando me dijeron, and everyone responding, vamos a la casa. So there's like kind of back and forth. So it feels like that liturgical ritual thing is so built into Cuban music. So I really wanted to explore that. And it was kind of scary because it was like, I don't know if you ever tried something like really creative and new and you're like, this could either be a terrible idea or this could be a wonderful idea. And so I wrote these over the first 7 or so songs I wrote slowly over a long stretch of time. Then I did not share them with anybody because I just didn't know if it would work out. But then one kind of major thing happened, and that's that GIA hired Peter Kolar as the director of Hispanic and Bilingual Resources. And Peter is a longtime friend, and I was so excited to have him on board at GIA. And so I thought, this is the moment, right? Because I knew I couldn't do it without a guide of some kind. And Peter is the best of the best, and along with Pedro Bacaba, who's here too. There are two, and I say this sincerely, there are two really amazing editors out there, and the opportunity to work with one or the other would just like be a blessing. And so I think, Peter, your first day, I sent you an email. I said, welcome to GIA. Okay, here's what I want to do first. And that's what launched. That's really what launched it, and launched a long conversation about it that led to Caminemos con Jesús.
Yeah.
Peter, back up a minute and tell me about the first time that you met Tony.
I don't know if that's a story that can be shared.
Oh gosh, maybe I don't even know that one.
Tony and I are both graduates of Northwestern University.
Indeed.
And I graduated a few years before him. So I was already an alumni when young freshman Tony Alonso was arriving onto the Northwestern scene. But I had subscribed to an alumni mentorship program, and the person that I just got randomly paired with, or let's say divinely, providentially paired with, was none other than Tony Alonso. So we struck up an awkward friendship because we didn't want to reveal to each other that we were both involved in Catholic liturgical music.
And we were kind of awkward introverts, so we were just kind of like, so what do you do?
But that friendship flourished and has grown into something wonderful. And I consider Tony just a dear friend and a greatly admired colleague, composer, and artist. So when I came to my first day at GIA, February 4th, a year ago, 2019, the first email in my inbox was indeed from Tony, and it was laying out very eloquently kind of the premises of this project, the reasons behind it, the reasons for waiting until the right time to do it. And so, I was both honored by this opportunity, and like Tony, I share Latin heritage, and so my own heritage from my mother's side, native of El Salvador. I was this was very easy to buy into because it was very much in step with my own I think ongoing blend through who I am, and Tony can attest to this also, this blend of music and liturgy and Hispanic culture. So what a wonderful opportunity this presented. And as each kind of petal was revealed, as this flower opening up, it was this this wondrous kind of opportunity to dive into something amazingly new, somewhat scary, but just so exciting on so many levels. So that's it was an easy yes to dive down this path.
So your first day, February 4, you get this project and we're off and running. I think it was only 2 weeks later that we scheduled a trip down to Atlanta to go through these pieces in person and talk about what a collection like this could look like. And it took some turns along the way. What it ended up being was not initially what we thought it would be. But I'm really glad that we took this leap.
Here's that initial meeting.
Yeah.
That's right downstairs in my house. Yeah.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah. And just to think about
it, as Tony played these, as we dove into Que Alegría, I mean, that set the tone on such a wondrous level. It immediately sparked everyone's collective imagination as to what this could be. And you're absolutely right. This notion of blending these forms, which have been oft overlooked, and yet we're so wonderfully in tune with our very ethos as Catholic worshipers and this dialogical nature that the songs imbue, and to capitalize on that, but in a devotedly liturgical mindset, approaching it in that direction. But the key to this also, and I think you know this very well, was not just write a song and have it exist on the page, and we've had conversations, about this in the summer series, but to have it come alive. Mm-hmm. And so that was the next step in it, right? Yeah. The next step is to have it come alive in a way that was authentic and that would shine in a way that truly would portray the musical essence and beauty of what we were dealing with. Yeah.
So that authenticity was definitely at the heart of our desire from the beginning of this project. We wanted to make sure that it was a part of every aspect. And so enter Juan Delgado's name. Tony, how did you know about Juan?
So Juan had produced, I think, a few people that I knew. Ivan Diaz, Ana Betancourt, who's a good friend of mine. And I really was just so impressed with his work. And it was very different music that they had written. And so I didn't know Juan personally. And I remember we went to lunch down the street, and I said, okay, so I'm really worried about where we're going to record this, because it just has to be perfect. It just has to be right. And so we talked about different ideas. Do we do it in Los Angeles? Do we, because that's mainly where I've worked in the past. And then I said, does anybody know Juan Delgado? And Peter said, I do. He said, not well, but he's a really nice guy, really talented guy. And I said, I think we should reach out to him. I don't know why. I just have a feeling. He's obviously very talented, so he gets the musical thing. But we also need someone. We want a great record, but we also want someone who gets the deepest part of this project, which is its rootedness in faith and liturgy. And so he brought that. And then third of all, I was like, and he lives in Miami. So I don't know, he's not Cuban, but maybe he knows some Cubans. So I think the first thing was Peter said, well, let me reach out to him and just see if he has any interest. And that's how we started the conversation.
Juan, you and I talked for like an hour and a half that day.
Yeah, that was.
We had just the most tremendous conversation. It was wonderful, and everything that Tony says is exactly that. What I was, I think the beautiful gifts that you bring to it. You have an amazing skill set as a producer, as a musician. You have your own albums, which are just incredible, a beautiful voice and musical talent. You know your way around the studio like a boss, and but at the same time, you have your foot in music ministry. At your own parish, in Catholic worship. It's like, this world very well. They don't exist as two isolated spheres in your realm, but they're, like all of us, meshed in this beautiful way. And so you bring that to your own artistry. And right away I knew that, yes, you could be the one. You would be the one to bring this alive in the way that we were envisioning, and in ways that we couldn't even envision, because those skills lie squarely with you.
Yeah. Juan, what did you think when Peter first called you about this project? Did you think
that was a great conversation? I actually met Peter. Pedro Rubalcaba introduced us in one of the NPM conventions, and we stayed talking for hours there and having a drink. And back then, on that hotel was it Houston?
It was Houston.
I don't remember. We talked so much about this same conversation. We're talking about the liturgical music, the gap that was between some of the other stuff that we wanted to put together. And then, like he said, Peter reached out to me and talked to me about this, idea, this conversation I have in, Tony's project, and we talk about Tony's music, and we were for an hour talking about not just this possibility, but the whole idea of, combining music and culture and bringing great liturgical music, but also doing great recordings, which, it's what I had this experience that I could bring out to the project, and I was very excited. It was very excited to me to hear about doing a Cuban project, I'm not Cuban, and I don't necessarily know the musical side so deep to do the arrangements on a project like this. But I knew the people that could come into the project and bring that heritage, because it's just like flamenco. You know, I've done productions in flamenco, but I need to bring flamenco people that can actually give their blood, their heritage, have to come alive on those projects. So by being in Miami for 20 years, I'm married to a Cuban. At the beginning of my career, some of the first projects I worked were Cuban projects, and very Cuban. I'm talking about music for Havana Nights, a movie, stuff like that were really, really depth into the Cuban heritage. So I knew, by living in Miami, being here in Miami for so long and working in the industry for so long, I had access to great musicians like Jorge's Goyri Celaya. By the way, I don't think that's a Cuban last name, Goyri Celaya. Probably. And I, I know we could do it. So when I talked to Peter, say, okay, we kind of had a long conversation, but then we had one meeting, which I think that's what we hit it all together back in Los Angeles, in one of the conventions that we met, the four of us, met there. And that's when I finally understood, because I need to hear Tony talking about it and see what his heart was. What is that he wanted? What things were really important to him? And after that meeting, I kind of, okay, yes, this is something we can do. We're going to do, I lay out some things that I thought were needed for this project. And now we started from that day. I think it's that we really started working on the project, and putting the ideas together. And it's being a blessing to have been part of this. The project is beautiful. The songs are magnificent. And I think this project, I got to tell you, when I started seeing the music coming in, I was very impressed, because I could notice that Tony took the time to write this music within the genre, which to me, the musical part, it's like the first thing that keeps, that I pick on. And the music was flowing. The words were flowing with the song. Vamos a la casa de, those things are within la clave, within the thing, within the music and rhythm. And so when I started seeing all this music, how it flows together with the rhythm, I knew this was going to be a wonderful project, and I'm just happy to be part of it.
I just say one thing to Juan, that first conversation that we had, where you said, I'm not Cuban, we need a guide. You kept saying, we need a guide. And I thought, I immediately wanted to work with you, because, so many producers, so many musicians would be like, oh, I got you, I can do it. They would just kind of tell you that they could do it. And you know what you're really good at. And then the things that you need to bring in like experts on. And so I just appreciated that so much. You got how important the authenticity of music making was. And then at that meeting in LA, you said, okay, I got this guy, Jorge's. And we're like, how do you say that? Jorge's what? Who?
No, and if you think the name is hard, wait for the last name.
The last name. I know. If you can say that, I feel like you have something to am.
But I'll echo that too. That was one of the things that was so impressive. Admiro mucho eso de Juan, that you had such humildad.
Kate's playing some Beatles music.
Yes.
I'm fighting with my husband for the Spotify pick. And also my daughter's trick-or-treating outside, so I'm sorry.
Yes. But anyways, kudos to you, Juan, because that was a brave move on your part, and to say, I know that we can do this, but I know that we need to bring the people in to do it well. Yeah. And I have a person in mind. So, bringing in Jorge's was amazing, and also a huge gamble. I mean, it's not someone that we have worked with. And it's weird how, liturgical music recording doesn't necessarily intersect often with kind of pop and more popular music styles. And so having this person with this, vast, wisdom when it came to authenticity in the style, and the instrumentation involved, and the recording techniques that you would have to apply in the studio, to pull it off.
I want to say something about the production, and this is important, and I say it because I think it's important to stress this. I think the work of a producer is to accomplish a vision that is clearly laid out, like Tony did, with the knowledge and experience, and to accomplish it, and find whatever you need, whatever it takes to accomplish it. And sometimes the producer is going to be part of as an arranger, sometimes it's going to be as an engineer, sometimes it's just going to be as a visionary. And I think this is key because like you said, sometimes we because of limitations, a budget or whatever, or personality, we tend to own the project, and then we limit the project to what we can do. And I don't think that's a fair approach. I think that the project, there's a clear idea, and I knew I could accomplish it with the help of the arrangement side. I knew I needed to have somebody like Jorge's coming in and lay down his craft, because that's his thing. This is what he's done all his life, and he knows it up and down. Like you guys saw, he owns it really. So I think, and this is just for the purpose of generally speaking, I think that's the work of a producer, to actually get the work. You see, I think I look better as a producer by having Jorge's done his work than instead of trying to play the Cuban thing, which I could, and I do, and I've done it for years, but not as well, And I think that's just I see it as a benefit, and I know that it looks like humble, and it's not. I appreciate that, but I really think that it enriches my work to get the right people to do it.
You're amazing.
Yeah.
You gonna play a little bit of this?
Yeah, I'm playing a little bit of Que Alegría. I can turn it up for y'all.
Know the dedication.
Papo. So instinctual for the assembly to immediately participate in their part.
You might bring it back a little bit. I want to say another thing about when Juan brought Yorkis to the table. So when I was young, one of my grandfather's favorite newer Cuban artists, this woman named Albita, and she had come from Cuba in the early 90s. She started singing at a club on Miami Beach called La Yuca, and he would go see her all the time because she was singing old school Cuban music, but in a kind of a new way. And he loved her, and he gave me all her recordings. So the first thing that comes up when we Google Yorgis, who is this guy? He is her arranger and producer of her last 5 albums. So it was so cool to have that kind of connection as well.
Tony, talk a little bit about the textual aspect of it, both in terms of the bilingual nature, the set bilingual nature, and also what you're conveying theologically in this particular text.
Oh, in this one. Yeah, I mean, writing text, in general, I find to be the hardest thing. I find it harder to write text than music, generally. And then writing bilingual music, I find to be not just double the work, but in some ways triple the work. Because you're not just writing in 2 languages, but you're also trying to make it each fit a similar pattern that doesn't feel forced. And I think anyone who's written bilingual music has had at least one song, if not multiple songs, where in the end it feels forced. Like the refrain, in one language you made a compromise, right, in order to fit the other one. And I really wanted this at the end of the day to almost be like Spanglish in the flow of it. So that it just kind of you can weave back and forth between the languages. And then in certain songs like this one, the refrain and the responses are always in Spanish, even though it's a bilingual song. So the verses that the cantor sings can be in English or in Spanish. I didn't say oh, we have to have everything in both languages, because I don't think we do. In fact, I think sometimes when you're doing a bilingual liturgy, even if the language isn't your own, just singing one phrase over and over is a lot easier than having to figure out, wait, are we singing in English now? Are we singing in Spanish now? You can just kind of rest into the rhythm of the song. And so this being in my mind, this is a gathering piece, right? I rejoiced when I heard them say, "Let us go to the house of the Lord." Qué alegría cuando me dijeron, "Vamos a la casa del Señor." And I just wanted something that people could just sing, almost like a Tazé piece, but in Cuban song, without having to think too much.
Yeah. What I love about that, both at a musical level, but also on a lingual level, is what it says to the people who are engaged in it. That because of the call and response nature, it says, the musicians are saying, we can't do this without you, the assembly, and vice versa. But also because of the insistence of the Spanish response every time, we're saying, we can't do this without Spanish. We can do this without Spanish speakers and singers. And I think that helps us to, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, to drive home a type of union that I think is important.
Yeah. It's a bold move also pastorally, but I think it also respects the language on another level beyond just conveying meaning. But there's an inherent beauty about how a language sounds and sings. That in translated form oftentimes loses some of that, even if the meaning is retained in proper translation. But there's a beauty about how it rolls off the lips, how the syllables flow, how the rhythms align, that has value in retaining. And if it's short enough, especially on a pastoral level, if it's short enough to be able to grasp, and because of its repetitive nature, the repetition allows you then to own it. Even if at first it's uncomfortable or foreign, it over time becomes yours, and then you can claim it. And so I think this is an important lesson. Those of us working in bilingual music and music ministry, we have this at our disposal to explore. We don't always have to be stuck in one language or the other. We know that some cross linguistifying is sometimes called for.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of Juan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that because that's one of the things that I think the project is most successful on, which is making the bilingual art, to say, flow. And it has to do with what I was saying at the beginning, that you wrote the music and you made it fit well within the rhythm, like the Son Cuban or whatever we were singing. And that was one of the things that got my attention. And I really commend you for doing that. And not just obviously in the production side, I love it. And I love to do great music, but as a pastoral musician too, I really appreciated that, because there's not a lot of music like this. But there's a lot of people that could use this music here in the United States and honestly in South America too. I was talking with a friend from Colombia. There was a musician, and I told her, that's funny because I told her, this is a project, it's going to be so good for the United States, for the Hispanic people of the United States that are used to this music, and for the bilingual parish and stuff. And she told me, "Are you kidding me? This is good for Colombia too. This is great for Cali." She told me, "I can use this in Cali." She told me, "This is great music for period." She told me, and I agree. And I think that the work that you did and make this work well with the languages, compromising sometimes by not doing everything in every single language. I think that's a good compromise, because when it comes to music, I think it's important. I know the text is the most important thing, so why force it? Right. Why force it? And also, I think that if it doesn't sound good, if you can do what you did in some of the songs like this one, okay, let the refrain in Spanish. We're a bilingual. If it's a bilingual, mass, or we're doing a bilingual song, I think it's fine. I think it's good, and I think that was a right approach. In my opinion, is that not as a producer only, but as a pastoral musician, I found myself in those positions when you have this work done in two languages and one language, it just doesn't work, and it's hard. It's hard because I know a lot of work was put into it, but it's hard because if you can't use it, if you can't sing it well, if it's not, if it's not singable, if it's not pleasant, then, then you end up using something else, and I think that was a great approach.
Yeah, Natalia offers a comment here along those lines too. So much bilingual liturgy feels forced or weird, but this album and this approach is organic and authentic. And that authenticity comes across in the music, and it doesn't just enhance the liturgy, it makes the liturgy happen in a real way. I think a lot of
couldn't have said it better.
Yeah.
A writer, no, she beat me to it, yeah.
Those of us responsible for doing liturgies and playing, especially if you're approaching it from dominant culture, from Anglo-English speaking culture, your view of bilingual liturgy often stops at language. And this album shows very front and center that there's so much more to it. The way the music sounds speaks to the heart, and it touches folks, and it enables a new level of prayer that simply words can't provide. And so when you have the Guido, when you have the congas, when you have all those elements coming together, when you have the bass line doing that anticipated pattern, which, we musicians are like, oh my gosh, that falls before the bar line, how does that work? But they do it so naturally. That's what you feel. And in that movement, that becomes, that's your uplifting, culturally, your expression of prayer. And so it's a great reminder for all of us, involved in doing bilingual liturgy specifically, to look beyond words, that so much more is spoken through how the music is rendered.
Yeah, every aspect of this collection forced us to be collaborative in a new way, in a way that we have not before. And I think even Juan, I'm remembering that first Skype meeting we had with you and your piece, when we were all in the room kind of dissecting each piece. And as Tony says, like, you wrote the songs, but Yorgis taught them to you. I remember all those little incremental changes that he helped us to make that are just his instinctual musical way of knowing, like, this is how they'll know to go to the next part, or to come in next, or to go back to a refrain. There was so much of that type of collaboration and learning and just shaping that was so collaborative along the way. I have not experienced another project like that, but we were all better for it.
Yes, I agree. And that's one of the things that I think enriched this project the most, that openness of let everybody give their best. I think that was magical. Oh yeah, you got there. What do you have there? Otto.
And the arrangements, I mean, as an outsider, I don't think even I realized how much how much technique and skill goes into creating these arrangements. I mean, it's like arranging like a classical choral piece. I mean, like, it's that intricate, like all of the little things that you hear going on that as an outsider you might find fun and makes you want to dance, which is awesome. But there's actually all this, like, these layers of things that are very specific and not incidental. Like, they're not just jamming on 3 chords.
Right.
Like, do you want to say a bit about that, Peter, Juan, like the percussion?
Yeah, I'll just say this, and you can expand upon this more, Juan, but it's like, it's very disciplined. There's an exact science to how it takes place, and the players who do this, who live and breathe it, they know it like this. And they know exactly what section of the song is supposed to carry this rhythm pattern with that instrument, and then how they switch in the other parts of the song. It's a beautiful, beautiful orchestration.
Yeah, I know what you guys are saying, and it has to do a lot of what the structure of this genre is really about. They have this language, arriba, abajo, which is, the songs, the verses. There's different patterns for la cáscara when you're going through the verses. Cácara, para arriba. There's a build up before you come to a term. Then the percussion changes. The campana comes on the refrains, which is like a hard thing. Okay, we're up. It means the campana is hitting it. There's a science to it. There's a science to it. And yeah, go ahead.
How perfect is that also liturgically? When you think about refrains and verses, the music itself is lending itself to this fuller notion that this is the assembly part. Everyone comes in on vayan por el mundo entero,
Yeah.
prediquen el evangelio y
It's ascending.
luego se baja.
Go with the campana and go, and it's like a marching
So many
thing.
times we're guilty of just doing the same thing for an entire length of a song.
Yes.
And this shows exactly the ebbs and the flow of how a song should be organic, and how those fuller sections, by virtue of this instrumentation phenomenally, lends itself to expressing to the assembly, okay, this is our moment.
Yeah. And I want to say something, because I kind of play with the music, and this is music that you can do if you don't have an orchestra, which, on a real scenario, especially now that we have so many limitations, this is music that you can do with same flavor and a very simple orchestration, if you want to call it. I've been doing the music with the guitar only, and now with a guitar and a bongo, you can get the feel really nicely too. So if you happen to be in a parish where you don't have, obviously now we don't have a lot of people in the choirs, but we'll be there. But if you only have a guitar and a bongo, you can do these songs and they will sound beautiful. They will flow, even if you don't have a big group, And I think that's one of the things that's important. Yeah,
absolutely. That was a conversation.
Are you guys hearing me? Because I've seen people getting
you were like a little frozen. We could hear you the whole time. You're just a little frozen, but you're okay now.
You sounded great, though.
But you got the concept? You got the concept? Okay, great.
I
was going to say that. Go ahead, Peter.
Pianists also do not fear. I mean, especially if you're a music reader, not necessarily someone who plays by ear or knows the styles. It's all notated for you.
Yeah.
Now, I encourage you, and I did this in the session with earlier for part of the summer series. We talked a little bit about equipping yourself with some kind of basic fundamentals to understand how these patterns would work. But until you get there, you have the notation to help you out, and so you can see exactly where things are falling. Now, it looks tricky on the page. I'm not going to lie, but you have these patterns, and you learn how they fall on your fingers in a certain way. And so even piano by itself can pull out these pieces. And ideally, if you have the fuller instrumentation, if you have a bass player who knows the tumbao pattern and how they align, you can render this in a really great way. But even at its most basic level, like Juan's saying, with just some sparse instrumentation, the songs come alive. I mean, it's part of how they're constructed, and this speaks much to your gift, Tony, in composing them. But they come alive. They can be on the lips of the assembly and really enable their prayer.
Yeah, and that's one conversation that Kate and Peter and I had. The first thing, like, no matter how cool these might sound on a recording, they need to be able to stand up to a liturgy with limited resources. Otherwise, we're doing something else other than writing liturgical music. So.
Yeah.
Well, I love that we were doing a both and. I mean, we're making legit liturgical music, but we're not skimping on the audio presentation of it either. And with all due respect to our Catholic efforts, oftentimes our recordings tend to fall short in terms of quality. And this everyone who has heard this record, this album has said, this is amazing. This sounds amazing. This pops. I mean, so it's both an enjoyable listening experience, but it hasn't taken away at all from its liturgical luster.
That's an important, and I'm glad we're talking about this, because this is one of the things that I always think. There's a lot of parishes that will have percussion. When you come to Latin music and Latinos, everybody plays percussion. So you might have a hard time finding the piano or the trumpet player, but everybody plays percussion. So I think this is so doable, to grab 2-3 musicians and a choir that one plays the conga, the other one plays the maracas, and you get it. And that is, the fundamentals are there. But like I said, and like you all said, it could be done in a much simpler way as well, and it works just as well. And that's one of the things I think is very important about doing this kind of projects. And we were very careful when we were doing this. I remember we were doing the song, what is it called, for the we thought it could be used for the funerals, and
Gran Nube de Testigos?
That's the Gran Nube. I remember, you remember we were starting, and then we said, the tempo was super good, but then we had to hold it back and say, no, we need to keep the solemnity that this needs to have for and we do 2 or 3 takes on just to find the right groove Disney.
Yeah, and you were so good at this and this is where like the yin and the yang of Yorgis and Juan was so important, because Yorgis could make these into like anything really. Right. I mean, he's a monster musician. Yeah. And Juan at time would say, but let's remember what this is for. Right. Without sacrificing anything by way of
right. But it's clarity on where we're going and what it is for. I think that's a fair assessment, because it's true. We were. I remember this one particular. One of the times we were there, it was so fun musically. Yeah. But then we say, but what is that we're doing with this? Oh, let's put it on a concert, and everybody kind of got into the mood, and I couldn't be happier with the sound that we got with this beautiful.
Absolutely. Peter, you want to
do the Litania also to show this point?
De Jesús or de María?
De Jesus, because it also shows a little bit of how we had to arrive at this arrangement.
It's true. Right. Remember, yeah.
This one is so cool, and that it worked so well at LA Congress.
Oh yeah, for the adoration, the Eucharistic procession we did it.
Yeah, so cool. People sang it like they've been singing it their whole life.
I love it.
Dedicated to amazing composers that I learned a lot from. Elias Sánchez and Diego Correa. Amazing.
En paz descansen.
Beautiful.
I think what is ethereal about this, it's gentleness, but it has this underlying pulse and rhythm. There's this movement to it, and I think that describes the church. That describes the Hispanic church. We're a church siempre caminando. We're siempre estamos en emoción, moviendo, and that describes our essence. And so this litany just somehow in this existential way encapsulates this prayer. Our devotion, the sheer devotion, and its liturgical forms with the Kyrie at the beginning, and then the various parts that it goes into, and then these beautiful verses, Tony, that you composed. Juxtaposing with the traditional set of the litany with new imagery for Christ, absolutely gorgeous. So people check it out, and it's amazing. We could talk even more about the Litany of Mary also. That's worth mentioning it on this meeting too.
I was going to say one other thing about this project, that it initially began in a very different form. We were going to do half of these Cuban songs and half of songs in more of a, I don't know what you would call it, Minnesotan liturgical style.
That's what I was going
to we just thought we'd put these together, and it would be, just like this, Cuban American, but like separate, Cuban and American. And we tried to make this work, and it just was not working. And it took me a long time to realize why it wasn't working, that we were really trying to put two things together that really, the Cuban stuff needed to be its own thing. So we recorded the first set of songs in the summer, actually probably about a little over a year ago. It was like June of 2019. And we left that session saying, oh my goodness.
Yes.
This is its own thing. Like, these songs cannot be next to these other songs, or the other songs are going to sound completely out of place. And then I really spent a couple weeks trying to figure out what exactly to do about that. Do we just release these 6 or 7 songs, whatever we had? Because we had a plan, and I like having a plan and just going with the plan. But I realized that the plan wasn't going to work. And Juan was so patient, and a lot of difficult in trying to figure this out. But I realized that I wanted to make it a full project and write another 4 or 5 songs. And so we went back in October. And so even at this time last year, the song you just listened to was not even written, honestly. And then we had the second sessions, which I'm so grateful for, because I think those second sessions added a lot to the project that just wouldn't have been there, including the LA Congress theme song.
Yeah.
So
thank you for for all of your guidance throughout the whole thing. Juan, and for Kate and Peter for your flexibility as we really found our way together on this project.
Yeah, so much
worth it. It was worth it. Yes.
Things.
Yeah, but that was good.
Yeah.
I mean, it spoke to, I think, the desire we all had to listen to the spirit of the moment and listen to the wisdom of each other in order to be true to that authentic quality we were hoping that we would carry with every aspect of this project. And that also means that we already have some stuff that's like on deck to come next. And I'm excited about that too, because what I love about that we got to make this all a Cuban project was that it helps the history and the culture and the life of the music to shine and stand on its own in a way that we've never done before. And also there's like a lot of it, but there is not a single song in this collection that is a piece of filler. Every single song has an intent, and as you listen to it, you can say, oh yeah, here's where I would use that, and I could easily do Gran Nube in the month of November, and then we could do it at funerals, and then it answers a lot of questions that I think we have as pastoral musicians about how do we teach our assemblies new music, and then what do we teach them and why. Every single song has an answer like that. And I was just remembering too that first meeting we had when we went to Atlanta, Peter, and Tony had all of this music, and some of it is what you see here on this album, and some of it is yet to come on some future work. I looked at it all and I thought, I think you need a Mary song. And I remember you were going to Miami, like shortly after we visited you, I think for your birthday. And I think you called or you made a voice memo or something, and you sang this, and there was Papo and Mama in the background singing the responses, but that's where this Marian litany came from.
That's Ernesto Fernandez on flute. Amazing. Love it.
Yes. Dr. Ernesto Fernandez.
Yes, doctor, exactly. Is he Cuban?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Tony, talk about this, how this came about, and the construct behind it. It's a beautiful concept.
That we needed a Marian piece. And I was listening to a lot of Buena Vista Social Club. This chord progression is almost exactly Cuarto de Tula. But liturgically speaking, I really wanted a Marian piece that would celebrate the Mary in her different forms and all of the Latin American expressions. Guadalupe, Caridad, all of these things. And to be able to call out both the Marian and the country, because Latinos have such pride in their Marian apparition, figure, whatever you want to call it, patroness. But also there's love across for each other's Marys, you know? And so you hear that throughout the whole thing. La Virgen de la Caridad del Pobre ruega por nosotros, cuida tu pueblo cubano, ruega por nosotros. Our Lady of Charity, pray for us, take care of, watch over the Cuban people. And you have that for all of the countries. It was a blast. Of course, it's an 8-minute long song, I think. But I envision it being a procession, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I could even envision like people with like holding up their like, icons, you know, in procession.
Standartes.
And banners, yeah, exactly, and all of that, singing that. That's my dream. I would love to see like at the LA Congress in that big arena, them coming in with all of the.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. That would be
But
awesome.
it's a source of pride also. I mean, you know, your homeland is named, and you get to uplift, you know, this very specific apparition that has great meaning to you and your comrades, from your homelands. So, and the fact that you go through 6 verses of this, you know, I mean, we were very comprehensive, you know, in terms of making sure that we have good representation from all across Latin America. And the last verse, of course, I mean, it includes the United States. It includes Leche Buen Parto, right? And so you have, it's a wondrous combination of imagery, and the response is always "Ruega por nosotros."
Yeah.
And it has a wonderful refrain that's also call and response. It's the Ave Maria, you know. Ahora y en la hora de nuestra muerte, amen. It's
now and at the hour of our death. Yeah. And then we did this at LA Congress actually at a workshop, and it was so great because we did a bilingual workshop, and which was like 90, I felt like it was 90% Latina community. And they like would cheer out every time. They'd sing the Ruega por nosotros with extra gusto when we got to the, it was amazing.
Yeah. So there's that Marian piece, which is really encompassing of all of Latin America. And then we included another Marian piece that is Cuba specific. And I think it's worth at least some highlight or mention in this conversation. And this is a piece that was originally recorded by Gloria Estefan.
Corazón que siempre vive, lleno de misericordia, para todo el que te pide.
Caridad.
Sin demora, eres guía entre la niebla, para aquel que está perdido. Tú me alejas los temores, y eres luz en mi camino. Tú me alejas los temores, y eres luz en mi camino.
It is, listen to her refrain last. Can't compete with Gloria.
Bríndanos la calma, seguiré tus huellas para ti llegar. Eres esa estrella que siempre me va a guiar.
All right. What I was gonna say, I forgot what Juan, isn't the first time you encountered Yorgis was he had done arrangement of that piece, right?
Yes, I don't recall if it was the act. No, I don't know. But when I met Jorge, years before, I met him through an arrangement he had done for that song. I don't remember if it was original or not, but it was an arrangement that had impressed me, and I know he could do this, comfortably, because I actually had heard him and I was impressed by the work he had done years earlier in a concert for La Caridad. He's been involved in certain things with liturgical special feasts and stuff. So as a musician,
I remember he said as long as it didn't happen before noon, he was up for doing it.
I think we should also give shout out to the backing vocalists on this project, Freddie and Anita.
Freddie, Google.
You all hear them in the Caridad, those parts that come out. And so they did a wonderful job of emulating what an assembly would do. Pueblo cantando en respuesta cada vez con los cantores. And they did a wonderful job of both emulating the right style of it, but also the liturgical aspect of the dialogical nature.
And Freddie sings backup for Willie Chirino live all the time.
Yeah,
amazing. And being a
for Aimenu Viola too, which just won the Grammy for
the Journey Through Cuban Music album, which is amazing. I love that album. I love her arrangement of Chan Chan, actually. It's really
her album is fantastic. It's all traditional Cuban stuff, and not liturgical, but very good.
Yeah. Very faithful people. She and her husband, right?
Yes, they are. They're amazing people. They're Christian. They're people of faith, and I appreciate them a lot.
Yeah, beautiful music.
Well, I think as we kind of come to the end of an hour here, what I think would be helpful or interesting, at least, is for us also to reflect on the question of like why we think this project is so important, or why it has been so important to us, why we think it's important to the church. And I would start with, just sharing from an Anglo perspective, what is, a very tempting reality to kind of slip into this common narrative of decline, and how people are, we talk about this all the time, but lots of people want to talk about how, church attendance is dwindling and people are becoming unaffiliated or not practicing, or, the church is becoming smaller, or, more conservative in a musical sense, as people start to, be a little bit more outspoken, I think, about wanting to include things like the introits, the entrance antiphons and the communion antiphons. And it feels like that from an Anglo perspective, we can kind of get bogged down in this conversation about how little or how how small we are. But when I listen to this album, it just makes me want to cry, because I think it's telling the truth about what we say when we are church, that this is very much alive. It did not feel like work to work on this project. It felt like joy. It felt like promise. It felt like telling the truth, telling a story that is kind of an antidote to that all too common picture we like to paint of what it means to be church in America. But some of the answer is, it just depends on where you're looking and where you're listening. And in this way, I think, Tony, because of your your ability to render these tunes so accessibly, but also because of your work that you've done over the last 20 years to gain a position in liturgical music composition, that has brought some awareness to you and your work, and to now come forward with this album that is just so thoroughly bilingual, and it's so thoroughly you. It means something important to our generation of church life right now, and to what is possible, I think, at GIA, if we continue to kind of push these things that we think are important. I don't know, Peter, how you feel about it. Why do you think it's important?
I'm going to be so bold as to say, I think this album is as groundbreaking as Pan de Vida was back in the late 80s. Pan de Vida did a lot to, I think, open up awareness as to the acceptability of Spanish language music, bilingual music. I think it opened up awareness on the dominant culture side that it's a viable means to express prayer in worship. But also it brought some of that music more into the mainstream Catholic musical world. I think this album, decades later, is doing much of that same work, but in a new chapter, and specifically, it's bringing into the fold, and it's both for the awareness on the dominant culture side that Hispanic musical expression is much more beyond. It's beyond what you may think or encapsulated into one particular culture or style. And at the same time, it's bringing so many of those who perhaps have not been included in that first wave of inclusion now into the fold. And so you have, these rich Caribbean expressions that's going to touch people and speak, volumes, and those waves are going to be felt far and abroad. So this is a groundbreaking album. I have every confidence that it's going to be, its effects are going to be felt for years, for decades to come, because it's that important. It's that crucial. So many things came together, converged in this graced way. And we're going to be blessed for it as a church.
Yeah. Juan, what do you think?
I agree. I agree with that. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because this is a project that represents the people that are here. The immigration has changed a lot in the last 20, 30 years. And I think there's a much bigger and different representation of the heritages of the different, Hispanic cultures. The Caribbean, like you said, the Cuban, the Dominicans, the Colombians, the Venezuelans, they all will identify with this. And they have a space now with this project of music that it's part of their own heritage. Because the Cuban music is really the backbone of the salsa, of the tropical music, the music that we know as salsa.
Universal in its own right. It's also universal.
So all this tropical, more contemporary salsa comes from this. So this is like the backbone of it, and the instruments, the conga, the things that we can use, we can now bring them and be part of the assembly, bringing those instruments are part of our culture, which I think it's important to have that blend, because we are here. We are part of the community. We are, and I get it. It's not for everybody, but it's good to have the resource, and I think it will be used. I think it will be a good a good project that, like you say, I think this will make an impact that will last for years, and that probably decades from now we're going to talk about this as, okay, this was that first album that did that, because I don't know anything like this. I haven't seen it. There's some Cuban music that was published probably 30 or 40 years ago, and it's great music, but it hasn't been upgraded, on the music side, and we don't have that many resources from that music. It's very limited what there is, So this is this is, like you say, a new chapter opened 20, 30 years later, and probably 30, 40, if I'm not mistaken, and it's so refreshing, and I'm so happy to be part of it, because I think that I'll be very, proud of being 20, 30 years from now, look back and say, that's a project we did, and we'll feel good about ourselves that we were useful, and we were used in the process of bringing this to life. So I'm very happy to be part of it.
Well, I love the fact that you say it is música del pueblo y para el pueblo.
Yeah.
So I mean, and there you go.
Tu pueblo canta.
Yeah,
and we can't live sin talk about this beautiful song, which is a recessional song that I think and it's not because of the wonderful dedication. I swear it's not because of that, but it's an awesome recessional song. There's not that many with this Latino rhythm, Caribbean that you can have on collections that you can have such a big party going on. We used to do this back in the choir. The first choir I was here participated, by the way, my mother-in-law was the director, and my wife was the guitar player of that choir. And so the whole band was Cuban. So I was a pianist, so I kind of knew the tumbao, but every time the mass ended, it was a little bit more charismatic. Every recessional song was a combination of alabanzas, of worship songs, and it was all Cuban music. It was such a party finishing up. People was going out, and they were casi que, dancing what's it called?
Conga line?
Yeah, conga dance. It was like a conga line coming out, and that energy of go out and a joyful mood, it just changed your whole week. It changed your whole, I don't know how to explain it, but it works. If you go out praising and worshiping and dancing and happy with whatever music that and makes you do that, because it's not the same for everybody. We get it, but it's good to have it anyway. Yeah. And great education anyways too.
Especially the dedication.
Para el mundo entero para predicar el evangelio.
Yes. Yeah. Go out to the world. Yeah.
Amen.
Tony, what do you think about why this is important?
Well, for me, honestly, part of it is just personal. Like, as I began to lose like the deepest anchors to Cuba, my grandmother, my grandfather, I really wanted to do something that would carry on their legacy. Like, I even find myself cooking a lot more Cuban food now that they're gone, things like that, things that connect you to those who came before you. But I'm thinking here, I'm seeing Carlos offering this question about, so much of the music being rooted in Mexican styles. And my hope is, that this project isn't just about like celebrating my Cuban heritage, but also unlocks all of the different Latino musical expressions to be more represented in the Catholic Church, because so many people in the US, like as Juan was alluding to, I mean, in a way, this whole project is about unlocking that richness, which has been brought forward so beautifully by so many of our colleagues, but not as diverse in all of its diversity as I think we could have. And I think that could be a paradigm, not just for Latino cultures, but Asian cultures and others as well, to really embrace the fullness. And for me, it's not just about hospitality. It's not just about inclusion, although those things are important, but I think it's about telling the truth about who God is. And we can't know the truth about who God is unless we have everybody, like it's everybody's version, everybody's Mary, everybody's expression, particular way of singing their life and their love to God needs to be represented, or we don't have the full theological picture. And so I hope we continue to hear from many others. And what stands out most for me though, in terms of the project as a process, is this idea of teología en conjunto that we have in theology, of doing theology in community together. And this project is not one that could have existed without every person's role. I mean, truly, every single person who played, Juan as producer, Peter, Kate as in their editorial roles. I mean, this project could not have been. And I have had to relinquish happily my desire to control every aspect of everything. And I have been better for it, and the project has been better for it. But I've learned from all of you, and I continue to learn. And I feel so grateful for that, especially in this moment of isolation. The deep lie that we were ever individualistic. We're all bound to each other, and we all need each other. And I feel that now more than ever, and thinking about this project gives me continued hope. So thank you.
Amazing.
Amen.
Thank you.
Big breast. Yeah.
Thank you all for being here and continuing this conversation. I know that we could spend all day to get together, and I hope that we can again soon.
Over pastelitos, I hope.
Yes.
Yes, I didn't get those.
I celebrate that what you said, Tony, and I agree. And it's something I realized through the years is that our better version is that one that is part of the whole. When we work together, we get to do the very best. And I welcome that, and I appreciate it a lot.
It's body of Christ.
Yes.
Yes. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you to all the attendees. One more day, you can join us tomorrow for our last session in the summer series, and maybe a few secrets about some other stuff that's about to come. So I'm so grateful for all of you, for all the continued work. Wonderful spending an afternoon with you. And as requested,
Maya!
Hey!
Okay, everybody go check out the whole Caminemos.
All of the best. Thank you for joining us today, everybody.
God bless. Dios les bendiga.